Hello, guys. This is Darcinovia here. This is my review on Dune. Yes, I know I reviewed this novel already last year, but considering the fact that I think I could have done better, and why not re-review Dune? It's one of the greatest novels of all time, and I figured why not give a second crack at it to do it much better than before? What is Dune, and why am I reviewing Dune? Well, if you've been living under a rock, Dune is one of the most influential science fiction, novels of all time. Dune would spawn 5 sequels and over like 16 other books that would be written by Frank Hubert's son and Kevin J. Anderson. Dune is a huge franchise. It has been around for over 50 years. Over half a century later, how does Dune stack up? Well, Dune isn't your stereotypical sci-fi. Dune has a lot of things that I feel like could relate to the modern world. And there's a lot of philosophy in Dune as well. Dune, at least this book, is a cautionary tale of the dangers of charismatic leaders, which becomes more apparent in the sequels of Dune. This book, takes place on a planet called Arrakis, and that's where pretty much majority of the novel takes place. This book is a very long book, but I do think it's a page turner. It doesn't feel long, honestly. When I reread it, it felt even shorter than the first time I experienced Dune, which was the audiobook. The audiobook was great, but reading the book I felt like was even better. The characters are interesting in this book, and the things that I didn't quite get the first time around, I got the second time around. Dune is a novel that you're going to have to read more than once in order to fully appreciate it, because this book, I consider it the Lord of the Rings of science fiction. It is, that influential. You can't name a single franchise in the modern day that isn't influenced by Dune in some way. Star Wars is an example of a franchise that was influenced by Dune. I believe Star Trek, to some extent, was also influenced by Dune. Dune, I don't think you could find a single science fiction franchise that hasn't had its influence from Dune somewhere. Dune, this novel in particular, is a classic. It's something that transcends, the period that it was written in. Even though this book was written in the 1960s, it feels like a book easily that could be relatable now. I know some books like Lord of the Rings get criticized, for being really cliche compared to modern, literature of fantasy. Dune, I feel like, doesn't actually feel cliche at all. This book, I feel like, transcends, time, and I don't know if any science fiction, novel even compares to this. I mean, this is like, written by a genius. I know there's, some themes in Dune, like environmentalism, the dangers of charismatic leaders. Paul Atreides, who is the protagonist of this novel, who is he exactly? Is he a hero? I believe it's up to the reader to decide. Now, I'm doing this based on my, what I think of Paul Atreides. I feel like it's open for discussion if you ignore the expanded Dune novels. This book is something that I feel like any fan of science fiction should pick up. And considering that the Dune movie is coming out, this year or possibly 2021, I don't know. a trailer for the movie should drop soon as of this review. It probably is already up already if you're watching this review after the fact. I really love how this book gets into depth about the Fremen's culture. And it just, everything about this book, it feels like, it's written by somebody that understood the material. I mean, Dune, this is one of the greatest novels I've ever read. It truly is. And I'm not just saying that, just to suck up because Dune is considered a classic by many, people. No, it is a classic. It is worthy of the praise that it has been given over the decades. Dune, the first novel, not only is it a great book, it's a great standalone book. It doesn't feel like there's any loose ends, but it does leave an opening for sequels. Dune is one of those books that I feel like any person who is into classic literature should, read, because it's one of the most influential, stories of all time. This is one of the most influential books of the 20th century, and I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice, especially if you're an avid reader, not reading Dune. And even if you're not much of a reader, you should at least give this novel a chance because it's a masterpiece. There's just nothing I can really think of, not many sci-fi, that even can compare to Dune. From, the world building, from the philosophy, from, the characters, everything about this novel I feel like has stood the test of time. And it's something I can highly recommend to anyone that's a fan of good science fiction. This book, I say this with no regrets, gets a classic rating. It's a classic. It's something anyone who's a fan of science fiction should read. Dune, I can't wait to read more of this series. Next time I talk about Dune, I'm going to be talking about the sequel, Dune Messiah. Have a good day, everyone, and may we live long and prosper. Thank you.